morning, and I want to start by saying, as we do as our welcome, that whatever your story has been, whatever your journey has been, you are welcome here, just as you are. And this is a loving, diverse, spiritual community, and we open our hearts, we open our arms, we open our lives together in oneness. And I'd also like to start this morning by saying that Happy Father's Day. Yeah. Happy Father's Day. And I want to honor this with a reading out of this month's Science of Mind magazine, honoring the fathers today. On this Father's Day, I honor the strength within each of us, the sheer will that answers the questions. What needs to be done? What changes must I make? I also honor our greatest strength, our personal relationship with God the Father, of our understanding, the relationship that guides us as we make those needed changes. Born of the Creator, we all share the same spiritual DNA. I love this part, that we share the spiritual DNA of peace, love, joy, and caring. Given the free will to make our own choices, we live our lives as individuals. And as we do the best we can with the consciousness that we have in this moment, the Creator holds us in unconditional acceptance and love. And in honoring the fathers, we know and we believe in this teaching that it is a mother-father God. And the Father God element is that which brings inception, that which starts or originates change. And in that regard, we honor the fathers for their strength, for their protection, for what they provide as fathers in the human capacity. And we honor that fathering spirit that is in each and every one of us, for any of us who have originated some act, some work in the world, and how each of us can do this going forward, putting our protective love, the God guidance that we collaborate with, and our protection and strength behind those ventures. And so happy Father's Day. And so I also want to say, Brian, thank you for setting us up for this morning. We had a Brian setup, whether you knew it or not. So 2 weeks ago, Brian was talking about what's mine to do for each of us. What's mine to do? And he started with the principle that it is done unto us as we believe, and that we really need to tend to our thoughts, because sometimes we have some wild and fuzzy thoughts, and do we really want to stay aligned with those? Is that what we want to bring forth? And also, where are we placing our faith? And that has implications to every circumstance in each of our lives, whether it's personal, family, work, or the greater world. Where are we placing our faith? And you talked about being a baker. And there are a number of bakers in my family background as well, but not the B. Akers type. And in fact, we're a family where we have birthday pie. That's that type of baking. And my mother used to bake it up, and she would put it in, my mother and father would package it up in a box and ship it out here through UPS. Amazingly. And even though it was a cherry pie, it came intact, and it was fabulous. But I also remember about keeping our tending to our thoughts and tending to what it is we are creating with. One particular Thanksgiving, Grandma Dolly was a bit flustered, and as she put the pumpkin pie into the oven, she thought, oh, I don't think I put the salt in the recipe. And so, just put a dab of salt in there and stirred it as it's going in the shell, going into the oven, right? And as luck would have it, I was the one that got the portion where all the salt was But I bring this up because, we do this. Let's be honest, none of us are 100% on our game in every moment, right? And our tendency, our intention is what I meant to say. Our intention is good. And it's always that question of how are we tending our thoughts and how are we aligning so that we are bringing forward that which we truly want to serve up in life and have life serve to us. But then he did another setup. And that was last week. He was talking about what's not mine to do. And briefly, you focused in on the serenity prayer. And I too had focused in on the serenity prayer earlier this month and thinking about this talk and thinking about work that I'm doing in the world. And Brian was mentioning that there's one version that is about God grant me. And in that regard, it's a petition. It's asking send me that lifeline, grant me the wisdom here to discern what I can change, what I can't. And there's another version that he shared, and that is God grants me, plural, recognizing that we are gifted with this already. We don't have to ask for it. We don't have to beg for it. That it's already there, and we just step into knowing that God presence and wisdom and guidance is already within. And so, sort of recapping you very briefly, what we were talking about is not ours to do. It's time to stop playing CEO of the universe, right? Take our hands off, get out of that CEO suite, and co-partner, collaborate with the real mastermind that's the creator. Stop competing. And when we think about we can't do love and hate at the same time, well, it's hard to do competition and collaboration at the same time as well. And so, it comes to where are we lining up here? And when we think about oneness and wellness and goodness of being for all of us and all life on the planet, where do we want to line up there? And what is ours to do in terms of, it looks like stop competing. And by the way, there's a lot of science coming forward that really underscores collaboration as the main force in the world. And also stop dictating. And stop trying to change the world so it complies to ourselves. So thank you. So we've talked about what's mine to do, what's not mine to do, and today we're going to talk about what is ours to do. As community, as family, as emanations of God on the planet, and as people who are here to serve. And we know that we have a powerful philosophy about when we tend to our thoughts and we get lined up about what we want to bring forward, that it is done unto us as we believe, and we bring that forward. And so today we're going to talk about how we can do this together, collaboratively, for a greater good. And we have to know that we all are on the same team, even if it doesn't look like it. I mean, when we look out to the world, to be honest, there are a lot of times, and each and every day, that it doesn't look like we're all on the same team. Now, that's sometimes an intentional strategy, the divide and conquer sort of thing, and sometimes it's just happening because we believe in diversity, and in fact, life on this planet is very diverse. I mean, sometimes I sit and I ponder, if there was only one flower, only one tree, only one tone of voice, right, and so forth, how monotonous could that be? And so we really cherish that diversity. It's what sparks creativity. It's what brings interest. And it can have that empowerment for us at any time we choose, as long as we choose to embrace it in that way. And so let's go deeper on this. In thinking about collaboration, I ask you to think about a rope. Now, a single strand, we know, is not that strong. But when we look at a rope, it's a number of strands that are twisted and woven together. And we know that from that there is strength in numbers. And that is the whole concept of rope and the strength that we can rely on it. You know, that rope could be not even a pound, and it might hold up a ton, right? And it's because of that collaboration all of those threads working together, all lined up together, that give that strength. And we rely on that. It's a tool that we use. So we can know that when we line up together on a certain belief, on something that we stand for, that there is strength in numbers. And, you know, we're good at, some of us, not all of us, and some of us, not all the time, in terms of coming up with new ideas. But when we put a group of people together and just start, you know, popping ideas out there and rolling them around, it becomes a brainstorming session. And there's this exponential increase in the possibilities of what comes forward just by being in creativity together. And we also remember from the Bible that there is a passage that refers to when two or more are gathered. And we know that that too is a cue for us, a clue, that when we come together in spiritual practice, when we come together in prayer, that we are taking it to a quantum level, that there is a synergy, a resonance in consciousness that happens when we do that. And it's one of the most powerful things we can do. And we know that most change in the world is an outcome of that. You know, somebody might have a spark of an idea, and they might be hundreds of years ahead of when that catches on. But it's when, you know, we look for that tipping point, right? That point where enough people are lining up with that idea, and that's when the change starts to happen, the 100-monkey effect. And so let's recognize that this is a powerful tool for us, that we can come together as a loving family and loving community, spiritual community, and line up on a belief about the world and know that as we vest ourselves together in spiritual practice, that we are fostering some change in the world. It doesn't matter if it doesn't show up right away. It doesn't matter if we never see it. Think about those of us who are parents. We invest ourselves in what we do with our children. We make choices about parenting. Now, I remember for me, my son's father is 6'4", and when my son was born, in his early, like first year, they have some algorithms about size of hand and, all of that. And it looked like he was going to be, I used to tease him, someday I'm going to be talking to you like this. Well, he didn't grow quite that tall, but what it told me was, I need to think from these earliest stages, what is my parenting philosophy? And especially in terms of when something is not going the way I'd like it to be going, how do I interface with him? And it was easy when he was young. When your child is young, it's easy to just swoop them up and take them and put them over there so they're no longer in danger, right? Or they're no longer running into the street or whatever it happens to be. But when they get to be this size, we can't do that anymore. We need another approach, another consciousness, another, we need to be lining up differently. And we invest ourselves. One of the other choices I made was, I want to raise an emotionally intelligent male. Now, all of us who have had children or worked with children, we know that from those earliest stages up, we see a lot of episodes where it doesn't look like what we were investing ourselves in. But we keep going. We have that consistency of applying our intention and lining up behind that intention and showing up behind that intention with the faith and the trust that at some point it's going to make a difference. And that's what we do with our spiritual practice. For ourselves, for our family, for the world. We don't go there to see the results and look what I did, but we go there because we are lined up behind this. And when we collaboratively line up behind it, it's even more powerful. So, Brian, you talked about the Serenity Prayer, and I mentioned that I also had lined up on this earlier this month in preparing for this talk. And the Serenity Prayer reads, God grant or grants me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, what typically happens with this, and maybe I'm a little cynical here, I'll put that out there in case it sounds this way. But how do we go about discerning what's ours to do, what I can change and what I can't? How do we discern that? Who's in the decision-making seat at that point? And when we look out to whatever's going on, how often do we sort of have a tendency to say, whoa, who am I to do this? I don't have an international voice. I'm not some big CEO that commands a lot of power in the power world. I don't have a lot of money. Who am I to do this? This is huge. This is more than I can take on. Do we do this? What factors into our saying, what do I think I can change and what do I feel like I can't? And then we surrender. It's like, okay. Does anybody else sort of approach it that way? But then there's something else that can happen in there, and that happens to be passion, right? When we have passion for something, we stop being logical. Now, in this culture, right? We stop being logical when we've got passion. And how many times in this culture do we go to this place of, we need to stop being passionate so we can be logical and come back into, the little logical way of approaching it. And there's another thing factoring in there too, and that's mass consciousness. It's how have we been raised to believe what's possible and what's not, right? And to what extent have we bought into that? So maybe this is a place where we say, passion has power, and this is a place where passion has good power because it encourages us, it pulls us to go beyond what we think we might be able to do. And a case in point recently, now we're doing Metaphysical Bible, the class. I encourage you, if you haven't signed up, to sign up. And we haven't hit David and Goliath yet. But there is the concept of David and Goliath. There was this huge ogre giant, and everybody in the Israelite camp was terrified of this. And, nobody wanted to be in the front line on the attack group, right? Because they pretty much felt they knew what was going to happen. But then along came David, and supposedly he wasn't necessarily that big in stature. But what happened with David was he got lined up in his consciousness that he could do this. Everybody else felt, this is not mine to do, right? Don't know how to do it, don't think I can do it, not mine to do. But David got lined up in his consciousness. And keep in mind, what did he have at his disposal? He did not have nuclear missiles. He did not have, an AR-15. He did not have this type of armament. What did he have? He had a little slingshot and some stones, right? And if I'm remembering correctly, I think one of them was aimed here. And that's very symbolic. The third eye, the mind, the brain. And so we see David very simply taking out this power, this giant, that nobody thought it was possible to overcome this, even though it was something that needed to be done. And yet, so simply, he did this by aiming at that place of thought. And he felled the giant because he lined up and he said, everybody else thinks it's not mine to do, but for some reason he felt he could. So another thing I want to share here. I've recently tumbled into on Netflix a series called Grand Designs. And it's this, British voice, and there's like 4 seasons now. And it's not clear what this guy's background is, although I suspect architecture is part of it because it's focused on a lot about architecture and people. Each episode is a couple who have done something phenomenal. Lorna's shaking her head. I think you know this, right? And I'm so mesmerized by this. I love that type of programming, first of all, because it's creative. It gets out of anything that's political. It gets out of anything that's fear and anger and war related. But this is a step beyond some of the HGTV series. And not to go negative there, it's just a different formulation. Because it's not renovating, it's new creation. And what some of these people, and almost every one of them, these people are saying yes to doing something that everybody else would say, no way, not mine. And what comes from it? So for example, there was a man who had been paralyzed at some point by multiple sclerosis and then had recovered. And he bought land that was a cliffside and had the semblance of the start of a cave dwelling in it. And what he chose to do was to continue with his bare hands and a pickaxe and other tools, hand tools, to carve out a home and then bring it to completion, which seems so improbable. And, in that logical mind, we would say, can't be done, not mine, fool to try that, right? And yet, he did. There was another couple which they were looking for property in the middle of London. And the only thing they could find was this interesting little triangle that was landlocked with other houses. It was a parcel, a neglected parcel, that was surrounded by stone walls and gardening of like 14 other homes. Okay? And what they wanted to do, instead of building up, they wanted to build down. They wanted to excavate in the middle of this really strange shape, tight tolerances. And to do that, they collaborated with each of those neighbors and got each of those neighbors on board to say, yeah, temporarily I'll let you encroach on my space and remove that retaining wall and affect my garden so that you can do this excavation, and with the promise, I believe, that you're going to rebuild those retaining walls. Now, how likely is that? And yet, because of passion with intention, they lined up on that, and it all went smoothly, and they ended up with this fabulous dwelling that they built. So I'm going to go over that serenity prayer again. God grants me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And this is what I realized this month as I encountered that serenity prayer on a pillow cushion in a friend's home. That rather than say, gee, I don't think this is mine to do, I don't think I have the power or the wherewithal to change this. So I'm just going to surrender and stop here. What I realized is we have an idea in this philosophy: change your thinking, change your experience. And I really took a pivot on the Serenity Prayer and realized that this is this red carpet invitation to each of us to say, wait a minute, it's time for me to have a new idea here about what's possible. It's time for us to have an idea about how we can do this. It's time for us to create a new vision. It's time for us to create a new mental equivalent. And in the teaching, what that stands for is what it's going to look like. And to really line up. And when we do this together, remember the power of numbers. It's so powerful that we really can do this. And I also want to introduce the idea about legacy. Yeah, my hair has changed color in the last decade. And with that, it's part of thinking about, okay, what am I really leaving in the world? I've raised a child, he's 25 now. What else am I doing? What am I leaving as a legacy to this world? And I ask us to collectively think about that. What is the legacy we are leaving? And what can we do together to create a greater legacy and help be that consciousness behind it and under it? So let's also remember that, because it's easy to feel afraid. It's like, oh, this is huge. It's human to say, I don't know if I'm up for this. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't know the right people. I don't have the background that supports this. Who's going to understand this? Who's going to step in and champion this? And where are we when we go to that place? Where are we putting our faith when we go to that place? We're putting our faith in what we can't do. We're putting our faith in our lack. We're standing in a consciousness of doubt and fear, rather than saying, wait a minute. I co-create, I co-partner with the greatest power there is in the universe. And that power is everywhere present, in every situation, always at the ready. And when I lean into it, when I ask for its support, when I ask for its wisdom to flow through me and guide and direct and bring the resources, I go there in trust. I go there in belief that it is provided. And as Martin Luther King said, we don't need to see every stair on the staircase before we start. We go there in faith. We step out that first place. We do what we can in that moment, right? But we stay lined up in our consciousness. We stay lined up in what is we have chosen passionately because we believe it, because we're choosing to bring this truth of lifestyle that this philosophy has taught us into the world, because we know it has healing and expansive and transformative potential. And so we have a call to action. Pure and simple, we have a call to action. And that call to action is collectively, together, collaboratively, we can change our idea about what is possible. We can change our ideas even about our co-creative power together. We can lovingly father a new vision, a new and greater idea. We can lovingly vision that together in terms of what that looks like and what are we lining up behind. And I think we question, if not now, when? This is derivative Hillel in the Bible. If not now, when? If not me, who? And we can say, if not us, then who? And so let's remember that faith and belief is how we relate to our ideas. And let's choose to relate to our ideas with faith and belief. Collaboration is how we relate to each other and work together. Trust is how we relate to God. And through that, we can look and create together, really choosing something bigger and bolder that supports this world in new ways, because this is a transformative quantum power that our consciousness together can take on. So I invite you to join me in this affirmative prayer. We take a deep breath, for we are choosing something more than we have been, and we know that each of us is an expression of that one power, that one presence, that one life, that one master being that is infinite, eternal, absolute, and always loving, always fostering a greater good through its creation, on behalf of all creation. And that is us. That is who we are. We are part of that creation. And so we recognize that, yes, this is ours to do. For in the Bible, it is said that we are here to steward the earth, steward the life on this earth. And we choose to steward this, not dominate, but steward, and steward together in collaborative agreement. And so we know this to be true. We are inspired, and we say, yes, I feel the passion of that inspiration. I allow myself to stay inspired. I make a home within me. And I let this seed of inspiration of what I am called to do, however illogical it may seem, I realize that I am divinely called. And each of us so. We create that sacred space. We father and provide and protect that sacred space within. We mother and nurture it within. Allowing this to come forward, knowing that we are prepared simply by saying yes to this, by staying in passionate relationship with that which we feel called to do. We stop questioning. We let go of all fear. And we nurture and protect and provide this and let it grow, knowing that we are collaborating with God, that through this collaboration we are qualified, we become prepared. And in each and every step, we have co-creators, co-collaborators who get it, who honor it, who agree and are on board. And we know above all that we call forth that transformative truth of a higher and greater good, of a consciousness that is loving and loving in a powerful way that brings about that change which fosters greater goodness in the world. All we have to do is stay lined up with it. And so, God, we say yes. We take that deep breath, we prepare ourselves, and we say yes. 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 I know it is right and perfect. Yes, I know this is mine to be. Yes, I am willing to entertain a greater idea of what is mine to do, ours to do. Yes, I am ready to vest myself in this. Yes, I am ready to be more than I've been, that we are ready to be more than we have been, that we are standing aligned with loving hearts and consciousness for a greater expression that transforms the world. Yes. Yes. Yes, we accept. Yes, we are. And yes, so it is.